Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar. Today we have a marketing and PR consultant, a copywriter, and Substack publisher. His business is High Road Communications. And what he does is he helps people to be more productive and happier in their home office experience. Very excited to be rocking out today with Joe DeRamo. Hey, Joe, you ready to rock?
I am ready to rock, Tim.
Awesome. So we always start off here in a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be inspired by.
Story of success is actually it kind of dovetails with my story of failure because in was it January of 2002, I got notified by the company I was working for that my department was being eliminated. I was like, oh, that's not good. I went from being on top of the world, a really good job with a couple of good side gigs, and this was post 9/11. And what happened was they had some bad financial results. They pared back, they laid people off. And then I was in the job market and I was like, what do I do? And I decided, well, I'm looking for jobs. Well, we had just started a war, so people weren't hiring. So I started looking for projects. And I found a few projects, coincidentally, with the company that had just let me go. And after working on that, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should just start being a company. So I started looking for work, looking for projects, and kind of the success was actually connecting with a graphic designer who I used to use at my previous job, and she created a logo, which is really interesting for a writer, that the success part of their business was getting a logo, but it really made me feel like a business. And it's been 22 years since then, and I've been through all sorts of stuff in my personal life and working from home with kids, working from home without kids, and met some folks along the way who've been a good source of business. So really the success story was the sad story, is that how it happened. But once it happened, it kind of freed me to find the things I want to work on. So that's
Wow.
kind of combining both.
An accidental entrepreneur.
Most of us are, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, because my story is very similar as well. I got laid off as well. Mind you, I saw it coming. So, but it was a similar situation. I didn't really want to go back to a cubicle, and I just thought maybe I'd just grab a couple projects. Me, it's because I was playing music at night, and I figured no company would want me to come in at 11.
Right.
But but even still, but you're one of the longest that I've heard of that's been working from home. So over 20 years. That's kudos to you for that, because there's a lot of challenges that come with that, right?
Oh, tons of challenges. You deal with isolation. Like I mentioned, sometimes you have kids. In the early
Hmm.
years, I had two stepchildren who were elementary school age, and we had a newborn. So kind of
Wow.
navigating her back and forth to daycare, getting the other kids from the activities while my spouse was off doing the day job. Real challenges, but eventually you kind of get a rhythm going, and you figure out how to make it all work. And
Yep.
then the straight, and we worked in a puppy or two during those years as well. So that was probably more challenging than the kids, trying to get
Yeah.
him on schedule. But he eventually knew my patterns as well as I did, which was
Yep.
kind of interesting in itself.
Yeah, I've been through all that too. Like it's been almost 16 years for me as well. But it was a way different world back then too, right? Because now I feel over the last few years, like since the lockdowns happened, a lot of people are sort of like they're okay with this working from home thing. But back then, like it was different, wasn't it? Like people treated you differently.
Oh yeah, no, there was this shame if you went to the grocery store at 11 o'clock in the morning and just and you weren't totally dressed up, and what's he working out for at this time? How does he have time to? Is he unemployed? And there's a feeling, the feeling I had in the beginning was like, I did feel almost unemployed, even though I was working the same amount of time, because I wasn't getting up and driving somewhere. And yeah, no, it took a while for that to change. The COVID experience was really interesting. I don't know if you want to go into that or not, but it was kind of interesting in that, the whole world joined where we are.
Yeah, that's exactly
And
it.
everybody asked me what was the impact of COVID, and quite obviously horrible loss of life and whatnot. But for me, there wasn't a huge difference.
No.
And the cool part was that everybody kind of joined us. So now, now they're in the same boat as us, and we've got it down. We're clicking, and they're kind of trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
all the Zoom happy hours and other things people were doing to kind of make it more palatable. It's like these are things that we've been working with for years, just
Yeah. Well,
to keep it real,
do you know what I noticed is that all the tools, the Zoom tools and all that stuff just got so much better and less buggy. Like, I don't know about you, but I was finding that they were not, I mean, they were pretty buggy before the
Yeah.
lockdowns. As soon as that happened, I think, I did
Oh, yeah.
hear that these companies all poured millions of dollars into the,
Night and day
infrastructures.
difference. And the best thing, because years ago, I do a lot of networking for my business, and one of the best things about COVID, the experiences, people got comfortable being on camera somewhat.
Yes.
Whereas before, it was
Yeah.
always a conference call, and if you had more than one, two or three people on the call, it was confusing as who's talking. I don't know,
Yeah.
especially if you're not really familiar with the voices. Once we went to Zoom, you at least had a fighting chance. You could tell who was talking and who wasn't. And I don't even, unless the person's in the next town for me, I really don't do a one-on-one in person. It's always by Zoom. It's so much more efficient. And all my networking groups, we've now, even though we've kind of moved on from COVID,
Hmm.
they're online because it's just more efficient. So it's really horrible thing that happened, but some blessings as well.
Yeah, they figured out a lot of the things that we had already kind of figured out. Like, and I'm the same way with the in-person meetings. I really don't. I had a client just last week that wanted me to go in somewhere, and I'm like, really? You want me to go downtown, like in the middle of the day, and find parking and spend a half hour driving there and back? Like, I don't. Why don't we just do it on Zoom? No, no, really wanted it. All right, fine. But it was such a weird experience to be driving downtown and parking and going into a physical meeting when it's just so much easier with just popping your Zoom on, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, okay, along with the good note, you mentioned a bad note, that led to your good note. But, over the last 21 years, I'm sure there's a few things that did not go super smoothly. And I'm wondering, is there something that you could share with us that, maybe we can learn from?
Oh gosh. I don't know if it's a working from home thing, but I do a lot of PR for my business. And actually, it was one of the few times where I did. I pitched. There's a service called Help a Reporter Out, which offers reporter queries. And this one reporter wanted somebody in the field of security for transit and things like that. So set up interviews for him with this client I was working who has an app that does that. And the guy flew in from DC. We met him, me and one of the business partners. We had a really nice talk. We took him to the transit authority in Boston to have them talk to them, had a good interview with them. And then the business owner, and this kind of speaks to the working from home thing. It was a startup, but he still had maybe half dozen people or so working for him. But the day the reporter showed up, he had nobody in the office. So this brilliant opportunity to talk about his business to a New York Times reporter, and he's basically declined to have the reporter come to the office. And I don't think a story was ever written, and it was just like, wow, talk about, it's like the gold mine, as a PR person being in the Times. I mean, that's your ticket. And he ended up passing on the opportunity because he didn't want to appear like he was working by himself in an office, even though there was enough evidence that other people worked there. They just weren't there that day.
Yeah, it was all staged that way, right? With messy desks and everything.
Oh, there was stability. It was, kind of a newer, when they were trying to do like the ping pong table era and the stability balls and all. So they had all that stuff there, but no people.
Wow, wow, that's crazy. So, okay, so now work from home, one of the challenges, one of the very first challenges that I came across, and probably you too, is just figuring out where you're gonna set up shop in your house. Where is that jam room gonna be? And what's it gonna look like? So you must have some tips now on how to set up a really good home office.
I mean, you know what? I've seen a lot of things on this in researching when I put together my weekly newsletter, my home office hacks, and it really comes down to what you're comfortable with. I mean, you can have one of these Better Homes and Garden home office, but if it's not functional for you, it's, what, so kind of whatever works. My one advice is, if you can do it, make it separate from the rest of your home. If you can close a door and be separated from other, if you live with other people, whether it's children or roommates or whatever, just have a separate space so that you can keep it quiet. If you don't have that, I personally, I live in a cottage, and there's the only room with a view of the pond is in the kitchen. So this is kind of one of those things. Don't do as I say, say as I do, that sort of thing, because I set my office up in my kitchen so I can look at the pond. When my daughter is there every so often, it's kind of different. But I think what you look at is every bit as important as being able to isolate. So you want to have things that are pleasing to your eye. If you're looking at a blank wall, honestly, it messes with you a little bit. Yeah, you want to. A lot of us will have offices in basements, and you may not have a window. I recommend, if you can find a space with a window, natural daylight will help, because it's less of that, dungeon feeling. Which, I mean, it can almost feel like punishment if you're working in a basement, and and you're being sent down to work there, and there's no daylight. So those are some basics. Obviously, you need the equipment you need. You want to have everything within walking distance, or so you're not walking up and down stairs. That if you're sharing a printer with somebody in the other part of the house and have to get up every time, probably not a good thing. Just have. One of the things I'm big on, I do a lot of reading. I get a lot of recommendations, and Atomic Habits is a book I've really been drawn to. And one of the things they preach is getting rid of the friction. So if you pile stuff up on your desk, you're creating friction, you're making it an unappealing space. So come up with a system, however, whether that's a folder for desk stuff, but things neatly in a folder on your desk. It's still there if you need it, which is kind of the rationale as to why we pile stuff up on our desks, is that, I just want to have it at my disposal. Well, you can put it in a folder and keep that folder on your desk. It looks and feels a little bit neater, and you'll be a little bit more efficient that way.
But yeah, Atomic Habits is one of my favorite books as well. I learned so much from that book. Actually, I've listened to it a few times on the audiobook. It's great.
It's words to live by, literally.
Yeah. Now, like as you said, like when if you're alone in the house, well then, you could go set up shop pretty much anywhere. But you're right. When there's someone else in the house, it's very difficult to get into a groove. And sometimes people will come in and start asking you questions about something. And, sometimes you need, depending on the work that you do, I suppose, right? But for most of us, I think you get into a groove, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then, when I lived with people, with my stepchildren, my children and whatnot, I would have a little sign on the door when I was in a call or something, just don't disturb. And honestly, that was almost like the reverse happened, where people would come in, and it's really difficult. You really have to coordinate, and especially with the type of work I do. I'm a copywriter. I'm mostly writing stuff. You're a web designer. That takes a lot of focus. So having people knocking on the door, asking you where things are, and I need this, I need that. You really have to kind of create some boundaries with those folks and let them know this is a work hour, or kind of communicate, I'm going to be on the phone, or I need to focus for an hour. Unless it's really important, let me have that time. And in general, that kind of works out.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if this was your experience, but my son was 1 when I started working from home, and I found it very easy to train a young kid. It was like the opposite of what you'd think. You'd think, oh, it's going to be impossible to get my young kid to understand what's going on. Turns out it's a little bit different than that. It's actually harder to train adults to understand that you're work from home, right?
Absolutely. I think it's far worse. I used to have more trouble with my father-in-law, who liked to tinker around. When he'd visited, he would like to tinker around with various things. And I would say, I've got a call from 1 to 2, can we keep it quiet? And the next thing I know, I'm on my call, and I hear the snowblower being started up next door in the garage next door. I'm like, no. So yeah, no, that happens. You make an excellent point about the kids, and that you can sort of train them. And part of that is, and one of the beauties of working from home is, like, you say dedicated office space, but the beauty of working from home is that unless you need a lot of monitors, you can bounce around to other parts of the house if you need to, or say the public library to entertain a kid. They read books while you do what you do. I know at our house, I was in the basement, and my daughter's room was up on the top floor, which is 2 flights up. So we'd be in the middle. I'd sit at the kitchen table, and we created a little workstation for her. So it rotated from like a normal desk. It evolved into one of those toy kitchens, and then a toy beauty salon. And so she felt like she was working while I was working. And it was amazing how, and when in doubt, I had a whole Rolodex of videos that would bail me out. Sound of Music, Mary Poppins were very popular, and The Wedding of William and Kate was the best babysitter for me for quite some time. She watched that numerous times, and the impact on her life was kind of interesting too, in that she loves music now. She's interested in going in music therapy. This is a music show, but she plays about 5 instruments. She issued her first album last summer, which she did from home. So I'm not taking credit for it, but at the same time, she was definitely kind of guided towards music by the way we worked from home.
Hi, it's Mark Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches, and I want to give 2 very big thumbs up to Tim Melanson and his Creative Crew agency. I have been using them for a long time, and I am 100% happy. They get the job done right, they're fast, and they let me focus on my business. I don't have to worry about anything. So again, I want to give them 2 very big thumbs up. I have no problem recommending them. I don't give testimonials for everyone because my name is attached to it, but I gladly do so for Tim and the Creative Crew agency. So use them, you won't regret it, and good luck.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the instruments and the tools that you use to get success. I mean, what are some of the things that you use regularly?
Some of the things I use regularly, I'm a big advocate of using productivity tools. The 2 I use the most are the Pomodoro timer, and recently there's an app for it for quads, the 4 quadrants, where you prioritize your workday. In upper left, it's the most things that have to be done today. Right is things that should be done today, and then the third one is like to get done today, and the other one just ongoing tasks. I used that one recently before I went on vacation for the first time in like 20 years. I say that joking. It's the first time I actually went to Europe, and I hadn't been to Europe in 20 years. So I had to prepare for not only the work I needed to get done, but the work that had to be done in my absence. And using the quadrant system was the way I set it up. And I didn't think I'd get to everything. And using that system was really helpful, because I hit the left quadrant first, nailed them all, then hit the rest. And when I left for Belgium, all of it was done. The Pomodoro one is a really I've managed to incorporate it into not only to get my work done, but to get my exercise routines done. So for those who don't know, and I'm not sure if you know what it is, but a Pomodoro timer basically is based on the cooking timers my mother used to use back when I was a kid 100 years ago. And you set the timer to 25 minutes, you lock in, you don't respond to email or social media, you just do your work. At the end of 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. And what I've been doing is you can use that time to look at your social media or emails, return a phone call. Or what I like to do is I like to do some exercises. Now, I've discovered a guy named Matt Fury who has a bunch of body weight exercises and other types of really beneficial exercises you can do in like 2 or 3 minutes and get a really decent workout. So I've been incorporating those into my day so that by the end of the day, not only have I finished my work, but I've gotten some exercise in so that I'm ready to do whatever I want to do that day, whatever that might be. So make your work day a little bit longer, but you've gotten your exercise in. You don't have to drive to a gym because the body weight exercise is the only gym equipment I need is me, basically, and it works for me.
Wow. You know what I've found is, I've interviewed a lot of people that work from home, and it turns out that almost everybody has some sort of either exercise or meditation routine in their daily, activities. And I find that interesting because when I look at, the people that I used to work with in the office, I would say that it's exactly the opposite number of people. It's almost everybody has no routine for either of those two things. I wonder why that is.
Uh, I think it's a mindset we're trained to that, you show up at the office, you go to work, and the routine is basically your commute, which isn't much of a routine, frankly. It's the very last thing you should do before you want to focus on your work. And I think that's why so many people had trouble adjusting to working from home, because they basically thought they could roll out of bed. And frankly, that's the last thing you should do when you get up is start working. I start my day, like you said, with meditation, some stretching exercises. I do some handwriting exercises. I actually warm up my hands before I even touch the keyboard, which I would say
Wow.
most of your listeners probably have never even heard of that.
Nope,
And
I haven't never heard of it.
it's the instrument you use every day, but you don't train it. And that's why carpal tunnel is such a big issue, because some very simple, and I talk about that in my newsletter. Matt Fury, the guy I was mentioning, has given me a bunch of stuff over the years for your hands and it's really about your tendons more so than your hands. You got to stretch your
Yeah.
tendons. And, as a musician, I'm surprised you must have some sort of warm up for that as well, right?
I warm up my voice, and I suppose you're right. I do stretch, but I don't think it's a routine. It's never something that I even thought about. It would just be just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. Like just kind of like that, right?
Yeah. It's crazy how that has not, there's just not been, most people don't do it. They're always, that's the two things that surprise me in people I talk to. One is there's no warm up for their hands. And
No,
the
yeah.
second is they've never heard of Google Alerts, which
Oh,
it's just like, we're in the kind of business where that's a really important thing. But a lot of people don't know to create a Google alert so that they can tell whether people are talking about them or their business online. And it's interesting.
I've alerts and timers and reminders for everything. Everything is being, why have to? I think it's one of those things where people are like, oh, but how do you remember to do everything you need to do? I actually don't. I have a
Yeah.
computer that reminds me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. It's early on in my freelance work. I mean, I've always had a great memory, and I've always prided myself on that. And for a number of years, the idea of using an Outlook calendar, it's like, why do I need that? I'll just write it down on my, and now it's like there's just too much. There's so
Mhm.
much more so many more things we have to remember. If you throw in pets and kids and spouses and their schedules and their needs, it's impossible. So that even if you have the best memory, there's not enough Prevagen in the world that's going to help you there. You've got to write it down. You've got to have reminders. And especially, I know in my case, I'm part of the sandwich generation where I have a teenager and I've got a senior parent who needs care. So I'm bouncing around from one location to another. So you do need to write things down. Do need to have reminders, and
Yeah.
you need to have a system. And it's unfortunate, but it's the world we live in.
Well, and nowadays too, with the software, and even now with AI kind of running in here, there are some really, really cool tools that will help you
Hmm.
tremendously with balancing that schedule, right? Especially if you have it digitally.
What do you use from AI? Because I'd be curious to hear about that.
So I haven't actually started using it yet, but I saw it come up on I can't remember the name of the I'm gonna have to look it up and send it to you. But there's an AI tool that will actually take your calendar, and it will, because I already do the Tetris with the calendar just
Yeah.
manually, but it will do that, and it will make sure that your appointments are all set up in a way that will uh, be more time efficient. So I'm gonna look that up again, because it was one of those things that I put on my list, and I'm like, I'm gonna look at that into that. I think that sounds pretty cool. Uh,
Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with AI as a writer. This is one of the interesting things about, since I've been writing this newsletter, it's kind of changed me a little bit. It's opened my mind quite a bit. Before I was kind of old school and kind of set in my ways, and now it's like there's a lot of things out there that can help me. And I had a friend who's an AI expert, and he was
mhm.
saying, "Oh, it's like the calculator. You know, when you were being taught math, you added everything up, and once you got the
Yep.
calculator, you evolved to that." I'm like, "Ah, no, you're crazy." But it's really true in that, and it's actually made me feel better as a writer. That okay, I have this great tool. It's going to research things for me, which saves me time. My
Mhm.
job is to make it sound like voice I need it to be in, whether it's my stuff or whether it's the stuff for my client, make it sound like them and make sure it works for them. It's not a copy and paste for sure. If
No,
you
no,
use it
AI
that way,
can't do that.
you're making a huge mistake if you think you can use it that way. It is a tool, it is a guide, and you have to still put. So in many ways, I think it makes me more valuable.
Yep. Yeah, it does. It can't. Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And I have like taken some of that prompt stuff that comes out of Chat GPT and stuff, and it does not sound like a person. It's not at all. So,
No.
but it is great for eliminating the blank page. You throw in some prompts in there, and it'll give you something to start with, and then you fix it. Right.
Yeah, the blank pages, talk about tools. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges people who write for or have to write
Mhm.
for their work from home job or in general. The blank page is the worst. And that's
Mhm.
a lot of the tools I've developed over the years are just kind of basically doing like a brain dump. Like when I'm stuck, and it's not often because I usually can figure it out, but I'll write things down by hand, just anything that's in my mind, whether it's the weather or whatever. And eventually by writing everything down in your mind for like 10 minutes, you come on to the topic you're supposed to write about. And that tends to work. I've also, one of the beauties of technology now is just talking out whatever it is you want to write. So you can record your voice, you can actually, and it'll act basically you're dictating.
Yep.
So it may look like gibberish, but if you just, I have to write about this printer on my desk, it prints 10 pages, just if you talk it out, eventually you're going to see the stuff you want in it. And then it's just a matter of editing down and putting in the things you want. And
That's
so
really
there's a lot
smart.
of tools like that I use.
So, are all these things, do you think they would also be applicable to writing songs?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, totally. And in fact, when you listen to interviews with songwriters and musicians, what's the thing they say about the hit song? It took me 10 minutes
Yeah.
because
Yep.
because once they got it, it was like boom, boom, boom. It went like that, songs and lyrics. I'm a big Tom Petty fan,
Me
and
too.
I've watched a few documentaries on him, and it was amazing. He said lyrics for songs would take him 10 minutes because he'd start riffing. And it's very similar if you're writing anything. You just start riffing, and sooner or later it comes to you. It may take it may take some time to get you in that place where you can get it down, but once you're there, you're there.
So it's time for your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business.
I'm really excited about my home office hack, which is no surprise. I mean, it's my pet project. I've been doing it for 2 years, but it really kind of is the embodiment of an idea I had 10 years ago to write about working from home. People weren't doing it back then. And I was so busy doing my work that I never got around to making it the blog I wanted to be. And then when the pandemic hit, I noticed one of the people I used to like to read on Facebook was Dan Rather. And I didn't see his group on Facebook anymore. It was on this thing called Substack. And that's when I said, well, you know what? I'm going to write this blog idea I had into Substack. And it was kind of like, it was just a labor of love because I've always loved writing newsletters. I write newsletters for about a dozen clients. I think it's the most cost-effective way to market a business. And so it's something I preach and preach and preach to all my clients, is like once a week, once a month, somewhere in between. Whether they read it or not is almost irrelevant. You need to tap on the glass and to let people know you're there and put yourself front of mind. And we get all hung up on ROI and how much business you're getting from it. And it's a process. And unfortunately, a lot of small business clients will think, they'll kind of, half-ass it a little bit, and they won't really devote. It has to be an ongoing campaign. It really does. If you put out one newsletter, it's not going to do anything. You put out one press release, but the thing is that you have so many resources within your website that if you have a blog, or even if you just have an about us or frequently asked questions, you have content available to you to use in a newsletter, to use in your social. There's all sorts of stuff available. So you can fill it up quite easily. And I recommend outsourcing it, just because if you're a owner of a business and you're doing your own marketing, that's a lot. It's a lot. Make sure, if a newsletter needs to go out in a timely fashion, mine goes out 8:08 every Monday morning, like clockwork. And I've actually had people say on the few times that I've been a little late, or if I had some glitches, oh, what happened? I didn't see it until, later in the morning. I'm like, yeah, well, had a good weekend. Had a good weekend. So, I mean, that's what I'm most excited about in marketing this business and doing podcasts like this. And just, I'm really excited about finding out other people's stories about how they work at home, and, learning from them as much as they learn from me. And that's something I try to bring to every conversation I have, whether it's a podcast or just networking, is like, I want to give you something of value so that you're leaving the conversation with something you can go back to your office and put in play that day.
Love it.
And that
Right
excites
on.
me, as you can probably see. That gets me kind of jazzed. That and
Right
coffee.
on. Yeah, I've got my coffee here too. Right on. Well, that's awesome. So how do we find out more about this?
More about my business, you can go to my website, highroadcommunications.com.
Yep.
My newsletter is on Substack. It's called My Home Office Hacks. The URL is iworkfromhome.substack.com. And like I said, it's published every week, and you can reach out if I can put you on there. We do offer a paid membership. It's like $7 a month. So basically, if you buy me coffee twice, I'll give you some tips that you can, like I said, put into play today, save you time, which will make you money.
Of course, absolutely. And especially from someone who's been work from home for so long.
Oh
Right?
yeah. No, it's something. I often entertain the thought of going back to an office. My daughter will be in college, and there's an appeal to it, to being around people, but there's also like, I'm going to lose a lot of freedom. I'm still part of the sandwich generation where I've got senior care. So pros and cons to both. I don't think one is the answer over the other, but I think whether I do that or not, I'm always going to be working from home on something, because it's just become part of my lifestyle.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would do maybe would be get one of those like co-working spaces and
Yeah,
maybe go there a couple days a week or something, right?
that was kind of one of the, I talked about the blessings of COVID. I would say that was one of the casualties, unfortunately, because those were really peaking, and now they're starting to come back as people are feeling safer to be out there. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I would consider that too. And one of the sources I found was my alma mater offers that to alumni and other
Oh,
businesses, and a
really?
lot of people, and it was very reasonable cost too. So if you're looking for that type of situation and you live near your college or a college, you may not have considered checking in with them, but a lot of them will offer that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. My Home Office Stacks. Go check it out. Sounds like
Yeah.
it's an awesome resource. And thanks so much for rocking out with me today, Joe.
No, Tim, thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Awesome. To the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment. We'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.